when I first started out at hashtag paid, one of the things that stuck out to me like immediately was just like the sheer volume of like incredibly talented, thoughtful, like women in leadership here. Like each one inspires and motivates our company like every single day, not only to solve problems creatively, but to push boundaries and really pave a long runway of excellence for others to follow. So today, we wanted to share these incredible women with our community. And so I have Ashley Riske, our head of business strategy, and Richelle Batuigas, our head of media analytics and strategy. Thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. So I'd love to introduce you a little bit more. Richelle, would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
Sure. So I'm Richelle, and as mentioned, I head up our media analytics and strategy department. If I could give you a very quick summary of my career so far, I would say majority of my career has been spent in the analytics space. But upon joining hashtag paid, I saw my career journey take a lot of twists and turns and take different paths. I would say the driver of those twists and turns has been, really my passion for building. If I could describe one characteristic, use one characteristic to describe what I'm passionate about and how I pave out my career, it would be building. And so because of that passion, I've seen so much opportunity to merge in the strategy team and the media team, and coupled with a really supportive company, I've been able to make that passion come to life and that vision of creating this cool integrated department come to life. So that would be a quick summary of who I am and my career.
Amazing. Ashley, please introduce ourselves to our listeners.
Hi, my name's Ashley Riske, and my career started off in traditional media. I worked in television and digital. And then in 2014, I was hired to launch a company called Kin. We were a subsidiary of the US and one of the first full-service creator marketing companies to launch in Canada. So I've really seen creator marketing from the early days and the evolution that this space has taken and quickly taken. From, at the beginning, I remember clients not knowing even what YouTube was, and they thought it was just cat videos, to the advanced state that we're in right now, where you have teams like Richelle putting together measurement suites that were unheard of back in that day. And so I had the advantage of launching a company in a new industry and seeing it grow. And I ran our sales, our marketing, our strategy, our operations. And in the end, once we were acquired, I became head of Kin that overlooked the creator side as well. And I was really compelled and intrigued to come work at hashtag paid, because I loved the vision. I've known the CEO for a long time, Brian Gold. And I think he is, passionate and intelligent, and he's running a team that now shares those same values. And what is exciting for me is, as head of business strategy, I'm able to take the knowledge that I've had in this space and apply that to all of the different functions here so that we can continue to see growth. And it's teams like Richelle that really excite me, that we're advancing the way of thought here in a way that back in the day I never thought possible. So I'm inspired by many people here, including people like Richelle.
Yeah, it's really amazing stuff. I love speaking to incredible women like you, because it's not only that I feel like every time we get to speak, I learn so much, but it's really, really inspiring to meet people and stuff who fall in love with incredibly complex challenges, things and stuff that really do push the frameworks of like what we understand and know. And it's not easy. It's not easy and stuff to get started. It's not easy to maintain. So I'm kind of curious, like, have you ever felt imposter syndrome kind of in your journey? And if you have, what did you do to navigate your way through it? Ashley, should we start with you?
Can I start with me?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I was largely raised by a father, and I feel that in that manner, I've been taught to think like a man, which was a really great benefit that I had growing up. And so I feel I've always really looked at things that, for the most part, there's no black or white. Everything is gray, and people are making shit up every day. And I think if you can make it up but with confidence and backed by reason, then there's really no reason to have imposter syndrome, because at the end of the day, the worst that can happen is you fail, and from that you learn things.
Hmm.
And so I don't think I've had a lot of imposter syndrome, because I've led with confidence and I've led with kindness. And I feel both those things have allowed me to achieve success. And I've also not had too much ego, that I've been very open to saying, I actually don't know the answer to that question. I'll get back to you. And knowing that there is research at hand to figure it out, or to be able to collaborate with intelligent people to say, what would you do in this situation? And so I think by asking questions and recognizing that nobody has all the answers, and that at the end of the day, everyone started in a position that they didn't know a lot, and you can just figure it out. So yes and no. I would say probably no.
Yeah. No, but I love that. And so it's like the idea of leading with kindness and confidence to ask the better questions. Cause I think that is kind of sometimes a root of imposter syndrome. It's like, do I have all the answers and stuff? But I think
Yeah.
you're totally right in that, like, even just having the confidence to ask the right questions or find your way and stuff to from one question to another to find that sweet spot and stuff to like elevate yourself and your knowledge and stuff, I think is a great tactic. How about you, Rochelle? How have you ever felt imposter syndrome before in your career, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah. For myself, I would say it's something I face all the time. It's something I'm very vocal about with my peers and with my team. There's a couple of things though that have helped me navigate it. I would say first is being very vocal about it and open about it. The team and I talk about this all the time, and because of that, we've been able to share personal experiences, book recommendations, podcasts. And, I find that doing this has not only helped me find valuable resources to manage this feeling, but it's also helped me feel like I'm not alone in this feeling. In realizing I'm not alone, I think that's helped me be much kinder to myself. I would say the number one symptom that I tend to suffer from when it comes to imposter syndrome is the idea of perfectionism. Worrying that I need to be a perfectionist to deliver just satisfactory work. And I think having that perspective on life is probably a waste of time, is not the most mentally healthy way of seeing the world. And so I would say being kinder to myself has allowed me to reframe the idea of a mistake and failure. Instead of ruminating on that mistake, I've started to take a step back to acknowledge what has happened, and pause, and instead of thinking about that failure, learning from it and moving on. And I think the concept of imposter syndrome and overcoming that feeling takes a lot of practice. But I would say, being kinder to myself, and being open and communicating and empathizing with my peers has definitely been techniques that I've found the most helpful to navigate that.
No, and I love this kind of
Yeah.
theme of like kindness that's been kind of recurring like in our conversation because when you're working in a fast-paced environment, when you're working in business, when you're working in startups and stuff, like it is so easy to put like the kindness to ourselves on the back burner because like you're
Yeah.
facing something new every single day. And I love that you called out, sharing those experiences with your peers because I think that is truly a really good ticket and stuff to validate to with each other and stuff of like what we're experiencing is real, but we can be confident in the questions that we ask because this is what happening is probably happening to a lot of us, and we
Hmm.
all get to solve this challenge together, which I love, which kind of brings me to my next question. When you have had those experiences where you got to kind of interface and or maybe even commiserate with like your colleagues on like those really hard challenges, like what has been the best advice that you've ever been given? How about we start with you, Rochelle?
So the best advice I've ever been given. Something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is advice a close friend and mentor of mine shared recently, just a couple weeks ago. Um, and they're a founder of a startup and have been working in the startup space since the past 15 years. And they were talking to me about the importance of integrating play into your life, especially when it comes to your professional life. And by play, they mean, getting back to that perspective that we had as kids, where everything was fun and we're having a good time and you chose to, do what you were doing. And I think like the general idea of play is tapping into that childlike feeling. And I think being playful allows you to experiment more, to take more risks, to empathize with others, and I think ultimately helps you feel more satisfied in what you do. He gave me a couple of examples of how he practices this. For example, him and his co-founder launched a new product, and it was a huge risk. And he was talking about how he reminds himself that, when you first play a game as a child, you may not win. And oftentimes when you first play that game, you don't win. But it never really stops you from getting back onto that playing field. And so reminding himself of that feeling he had when it came to starting that game and competing and cooperating has helped him, feel more comfortable with risk taking. Another example he often talked about was, when he has disagreements with his co-founder. Realizing that, you're cooperating to drive for a shared mission and goal and to win that game together. And so reminding himself of play has helped him approach those conversations much more differently, as opposed to just a debate and argument is, reminding himself of that shared mission. So that's, I would say, something that's really stuck with me over the past couple of weeks, and something that I've been reflecting on and trying to figure out how I can incorporate more of that in my life, especially my professional life.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. And especially coming from somebody who's like, I felt like was always very naturally like risk averse. That's such an interesting like approach, because like play is something that could, I don't want to say necessarily it's so easy to bake in, but like, there are so many playful elements of life that I think we so often deny ourselves,
Yeah.
but they're always presently there. And risk and reward kind of do come hand in hand. And I think that's something in myself that I definitely need to kind of work on or reflect on. It's like, yes, like sometimes when I deny myself risk and stuff, like, am I also denying myself play, opportunities to grow, opportunities to play with luck, to open up my mind and stuff and reframe the problems that are in front of me, or like the playful elements of life where I can find joy. So I love that. What about you, Ashley? What has been the best advice that you were ever given?
Yeah, I mean, I love Rochelle's answer, and I think somebody who I recently I'm a new mom, and so I've rediscovered play in a new way as well, and like the laughter and the happiness that that can evoke. And so I think that I love the idea of not being afraid to fall when you think of play, as Rochelle kind of alluded to as a broader theme, but then also just like the general sense of happiness, getting to know somebody. And I think sometimes in business and presentations and sales, you can be so professional. And I found my best relationships have been more of that sense of play, of, almost like I call myself sometimes like almost flirtation of sales, where you allow that human element into it that you would in everyday life of meeting new people into all of your business relationships. So I just wanted to reaffirm that I love that perspective of play, and I think there's so many places that can apply. But I'm going to actually take a different spin, and say I think the biggest piece of advice that I've ever given is money is not emotional. And I think sometimes women struggle with that. And when they're asking, when they have a new job or they're asking for a raise, there's a lot of emotion tied to money. And I think we've been taught not to speak about it. And I think that we need to normalize the idea of talking about how much somebody makes and what salaries are at different positions. And I think Glassdoor has done a good job at making that more open, but I think we should do it more within our friends too. And not from a comparison level, but purely from information and research, so that we can go into conversations backed with that knowledge. And when you're presenting something, and I've always been very mindful of it, I approach the pay that I'm going to get in a salary in the same token that I would any other aspect of the job. And I think when you can approach it without emotion and not approach it with fear, and you can take that away from it, it gives you more power. Because you realize that your self-worth is not invested in that. It's just another point of conversation in a contract. And so, whether it's your own personal worth or even just when you're talking in sales, just having an understanding of budget, that part can sometimes scare people, and that can sometimes lose your deal as well, because you avoid the conversation of what are those dollars. So, yeah, taking emotion from money, and I think we place too much emotion around it.
Yeah, no, I think your notion of like the power of conversations like backed by knowledge is it's so powerful, and I feel like it's not something that I really have thought about it. You know, like I like in sales and like and strategy and stuff. It's also we kind of often start the process by like asking the right questions and stuff, and kind of hoping it leads us somewhere and stuff. But we also kind of forget being like even asking that first question and stuff. Like it's really important that we have that knowledge to like to back it up. And I love this idea and stuff of maybe integrating more play where we can make those conversations more accessible and take the emotion out of it. Make this a game where this is a joyful experience and stuff to share the knowledge that we have, prepare each other better, ask the harder questions, get to the better answers to lift everyone up. I think that's so exciting. Now, I know both of you have built such incredible careers, and every time I speak with both of you, it's I love that I have no idea like how far you both can go because you have such incredible talents, and I feel like you guys are both such great teachers that you kind of raise the tides around you, and it's exciting to follow your journey. So what is one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, that you would like to share with your younger self?
Mine is simple and short, so I'll go first. I would say if I were to speak to my former self, it would be if you have the feeling like you need to say something, just say it and don't question yourself. I think there's so many times that I reflect back on my career where I was scared or intimidated to say something. But looking back, I think that inhibited me from having an even greater impact that I could have had. So that would be a principle that I would tell myself, and something that I currently carry with me all the time.
Oh, I love that. How about you, Ashley?
I would say that my biggest piece of advice would have been don't seek validation from others. Do it for yourself. I think a lot of things that I did in life, I wanted approval, whether it was my parents' approval or my boss's approval or a team's approval, or even like I went to Western at a business school that was incredibly competitive, and I feel like everybody was competing to get each other's approval on where we were in our career and our journey. And something recently I did was I took 18 months off for maternity leave, and I would have normally never done that, but I did it because of the pandemic. But I would have been so concerned of what people thought about me if I was supposed to be this like strong businesswoman and to take that much time for my family. I think the old me would have been intimidated by that, but I realized how important it was, and I've been really focusing on living for myself and not living for the validation of others.